Most people dream of retiring early, but very few ever make it happen. Why? Because they believe it takes millions of dollars sitting in the bank before they can even think about financial freedom. The truth is, you don't need to be a millionaire to start building passive income. You just need to be smart with the money you already have. If you've got 50 zolos and 8, you're sitting on an opportunity that most people overlook. That money can either sit in a savings account, losing value every year to inflation, or it can become the seed that grows into multiple streams of passive income. The difference lies in the choices you make today. Think about it. 50UK doesn't have to be just savings. It can be a rental property that pays you monthly, a portfolio of dividend stocks that sends you checks every quarter, or even a small business that runs without you lifting a finger. With the right moves, that 50 zeros and can work harder than you ever could in a 9-to-5 job. So today, I'm going to show you exactly how to take that money and turn it into passive income that builds your freedom and allows you to retire early. These aren't get-rich-quick hacks. They're smart, practical strategies the wealthy already use. Follow them, and you'll start to see how financial independence isn't just a dream, it's a plan. Build a strong financial base first before you even think about turning 50 zeros into passive income. You've got to ask yourself one simple question. Is my financial foundation strong enough to handle the weight of growth? You see, 8, building wealth is like constructing a skyscraper. If the foundation isn't rock solid, it doesn't matter how tall or fancy you try to build, the whole thing will eventually collapse. A lot of people skip this part. They get excited about investments, about buying rental properties or throwing money into stocks, but they don't deal with the cracks in their financial foundation. High interest credit card debt, no emergency fund, overspending habits. These are like termites eating away at your financial house. And no matter how much passive income you generate, if you don't fix these issues, it'll never be enough. Eliminate high interest debt. If you've got high interest debt, credit cards, payday loans, or personal loans, it's like having a hole in your pocket. You can put money in, but it just keeps slipping out. Think about it. If your credit card is charging you 20% interest and you're trying to invest your 50WK for a 7-10% return, you're losing the game before it even starts. Clearing that debt is the fastest, safest return on investment you'll ever get. Paying off a card charging you 20% is basically the same as earning a guaranteed 20% return, and no investment in the world can promise you that consistently. So before you do anything else, wipe out the debt that's draining your potential. Build an emergency fund. Now, let's talk about emergencies, because life doesn't send you a warning before it drops a problem in your lap. You lose your job, your car breaks down, 8, or there's a sudden medical bill. If you don't have an emergency fund, you're forced to dip into your investments or take on new debt, which can destroy your financial progress. That's why you need a separate stash of 3 to 6 months worth of expenses sitting in a high-yield savings account. It's not there to make you rich. It's there to protect your investments. Think of it like a safety net for a tightrope walker. You might never need it. 8, but knowing it's there allows you to keep walking confidently without fear of falling. Get your budget under control. Here's something most people don't want to hear. 8, you can't out-invest bad spending habits if you're living paycheck to paycheck because you're overspending. Throwing 50 zeros into investments won't fix the problem. It'll just delay it. Building a strong financial base means mastering your cash flow. Track your spending, cut out the waste, and live below your means. Remember, wealth isn't about how much you earn, it's about how much you keep. The tighter your control on expenses, the easier it will be for your passive income to eventually cover your lifestyle. Protect yourself with insurance. This one gets ignored a lot, but it's critical. Imagine you've invested your 50 dollars wisely, and then an accident happens. Without proper insurance, whether it's health, car, home, 8, or even life insurance, you could be forced to liquidate your investments just to cover the costs. That's why protecting yourself isn't optional. 48. Insurance doesn't feel exciting because it's not making you money, but it's protecting the machine that does. Think of it as a shield that keeps your financial empire safe from unexpected blows. Build the right mindset, finally. The strongest foundation isn't just financial, it's mental. If you're the type of person who panics every time the stock market dips, or you chase every hot tip you hear on social media, your wealth will never grow steadily. You've got to develop patience and discipline. Wealth doesn't happen overnight, and passive income doesn't mean zero effort. It means smart effort, consistently applied over time. Your 50s is just the starting block. It's your habits, discipline, and long-term thinking that will multiply it into financial freedom. Here's the truth: people who skip building a foundation often end up sabotaging themselves. They invest before paying off debt, and the interest buries them. They skip the emergency fund, and one unexpected bill wipes out their progress. They ignore budgeting, and lifestyle creep eats up their passive income. But the ones who get this step right, they're the ones who build unstoppable momentum. They eliminate debt, set aside a safety net, and keep their spending in check. That way, every dollar of that 50 years can go straight into wealth building instead of patching financial holes. So if you've got $50 and you're serious about retiring early, don't skip this step. Build your base first, secure yourself, protect yourself, and discipline yourself. Once you've done that, you'll have the confidence to invest aggressively, reinvest profits, and let compounding do its magic. Invest in cash, flowing assets. Once your financial foundation is strong, debts under control, emergency fund in place, and your spending habits aligned, the real fun begins. This is where you take your 50,000 and start putting it to work, not by sitting in a savings account gathering dust, but by investing it into cash flowing assets. So what do I mean by cash flowing assets? In simple terms, these are investments that pay you regularly. They don't just sit there hoping to grow in value. They actively send money back to you month after month or year after year. This is the key to building passive income. When your assets generate enough cash flow to cover your lifestyle, that's when you reach financial freedom. Dividend paying stocks that pay dividends are like little businesses sending you a slice of their profits. Instead of relying only on the stock price going up, you're getting cash distributions on a regular basis. Take this example. If you invest 20,000 into a portfolio of dividend-paying companies with an average yield of 4%, that's 800 a year, or about 67 a month, without lifting a finger. Now, that might not sound like much at first, but remember, you're not just collecting dividends, you're reinvesting them. Over time, compounding kicks in, and that stream of income grows bigger and bigger. The beauty of dividend stocks is that they're accessible, easy to manage, and scalable. You can start small, reinvest 8, and watch your passive income snowball over time. Real estate investments. When people think of passive income, real estate is often the first thing that comes to mind. And for good reason. Real estate generates money in two ways: appreciation, the value of the property rising, and rental income, its tenants paying you every month. With 50K, you might not buy a mansion outright, but you can certainly get started. For example, that money could serve as a down payment on a rental property, with the tenant's rent covering your mortgage and leaving you with extra cash flow each month. If direct property management feels overwhelming, you can also consider real estate investment trusts. These allow you to invest in real estate without the hassle of dealing with tenants, and they often pay steady dividends. Either way, you're putting your money into an asset that not only appreciates but also pays you along the way. Peer lending and crowdfunding, another way to generate cash flow, is by acting as the bank. 8 platforms now exist where you can lend your money to individuals or small businesses in exchange for regular interest payments. Let's say you put 5,000 into Peer to Peer loans at an average return of 8%. That's $400 a year in interest, completely passive once you've made the loan. Of course, this comes with risks. Borrowers can default, but by diversifying across multiple loans, you can manage that risk while still collecting steady income. Similarly, real estate crowdfunding platforms let you pool your $50K with other investors to fund large property projects. In return, you receive regular income distributions without having to buy the property yourself. Digital assets and online businesses. Here's something modern that most people overlook. Digital assets. For example, you could use part of your $50K to buy or build a small online business that generates recurring revenue. This could be a website earning from ads, a YouTube channel monetized with content, or even an e-commerce store that runs mostly on automation. Digital businesses require some upfront effort or smart outsourcing, but once established, they can produce a steady cash flow with minimal ongoing work. Imagine owning a website that brings in $500 a month consistently. That's 6,000 a year on autopilot. Bonds and fixed income investments, while they may not be as exciting as real estate or stocks, bonds and fixed income investments are steady cash flowing assets. They provide predictable interest payments and can act as the stability portion of your portfolio. The 50K, putting a chunk into government or corporate bonds, can provide safe, reliable cash flow while balancing riskier investments. Balance and strategy. Now, here's the important part. Don't throw your entire 50K into just one asset. The goal is to create a portfolio of income streams. For example, 20K in dividend-paying stocks, 15K toward a rental property, or writes 10K in peer-to-peer loans or crowdfunding, the 50K reserved for a digital project or small online business. That way, you're not relying on a single source of income. If one slows down, the others keep paying. This is exactly how wealthy people think. They don't put all their eggs in one basket. Why cash flow matters more than growth alone? Here's the thing. A lot of people chase growth investments like tech stocks or crypto. They want quick appreciation, but the problem is you can't live off paper gains. If your 50K doubles in value but produces no income, you're still stuck unless you sell it. Passive income, on the other hand, gives you freedom without touching the principal. It's like owning a golden goose that keeps laying eggs, instead of selling the goose for a one-time profit. So here's the bottom line. If you want to retire early, don't just invest in hopes of appreciation. Put your 50,000 into assets that generate cash flow, whether it's dividends, rental income, interest payments, or digital revenue. The money coming in regularly is what creates freedom. It's not about getting rich overnight. It's about building reliable, consistent income streams that work while you don't. When your cash flow covers your expenses, you're no longer dependent on a job. That's the turning point where 50K stops being just savings and starts being the engine of your early retirement. Reinvest profits to multiply growth. If you put your 50,000 into cash flowing assets, congratulations, you're already ahead of most people. But here's where the real wealth building magic begins: reinvesting your profits instead of spending them. This is the secret sauce that turns average returns earned into life-changing wealth. Let me explain. When you receive dividends from stocks, rental income from real estate, or interest from peer-to-peer lending, you face a choice. You can either spend that money now, treating it like extra cash, or you can put it back into your investments to make your money grow even faster. The second option, reinvesting, is how small streams eventually turn into rivers. The power of compounding is one of the most powerful forces in finance, and it's why reinvesting profits is essential. Think of it like planting seeds. If you eat the fruit every season, you'll enjoy it in the moment, but the orchard will never grow. But if you take the seeds from the fruit and plant them back into the ground, before long you'll have more trees, more fruit, and more seeds. For example, let's say your $50 is invested in dividend stocks with a 5% annual yield. That's $2,500 in dividends after the first year. If you spend that money, your portfolio stays at the $50 plus or minus market changes. But if you reinvest those dividends, your portfolio grows to $52,500. Next year, you earn dividends on the larger amount, and so on. Over 20 years, reinvesting could more than double your wealth compared to just spending the payouts rental property example. Let's take real estate. Suppose you buy a rental property with your $50K as a down payment, and after covering the mortgage and expenses, you're left with $400 in profit each month. That's $4,800 a year. Now, many people would spend that $400 on dining out or shopping. But if you save and reinvest it, maybe into improvements that raise the rent or into savings for another property, you're multiplying your income. Instead of one property, in a few years you could own 2, then 3, each one generating cash flow, each one building equity. This is how ordinary people turn a single down payment into a portfolio that supports them for life. Business and digital assets. The same rule applies if you invest in a small business or digital asset. Let's say you buy a website for $10K that earns a $500 a month. You could pocket that $500, or you could reinvest part of it into marketing, content, or automation to double its traffic and income. The people who win big with online businesses aren't the ones who take every dollar out. They're the ones who keep reinvesting until the business becomes a cash cow. It's the same principle across every type of asset. Delayed gratification pays off. Here's the mindset shift: the less you touch your profits now, the more you'll have later. This requires patience and discipline, but it's the difference between financial mediocrity and financial freedom. Imagine this. 2 investors each put $50,000 into dividend stocks. Investor A takes the dividends every year and spends them. Investor B reinvests them for 25 years. At the end of that period, Investor B has almost doubled the wealth of Investor A, all because of the decision to delay gratification and let compounding do the heavy lifting. It's not about working harder, it's about being patient enough to let your money grow. Reinvestment creates acceleration. At first, the returns from reinvesting may feel small. An extra 100 here, 200 there. But what most people don't realize is that compounding works slowly at the beginning and then takes off like a rocket. It's like pushing a snowball down a hill. It starts small, but as it rolls, it gathers more snow, gets bigger, and eventually becomes unstoppable. By reinvesting your passive income, you're accelerating your wealth growth. Every dollar you reinvest becomes a little employee working for you. Over time, you don't just have 50,000 working, you have 60,000, then 100,000, then 500,000, all producing passive income. When to start living off the profits, of course. The goal of passive income is to eventually live off it. But the trick is knowing when. If you start pulling money too early, you cut off the compounding effect. The smarter move is to reinvest until your passive income comfortably exceeds your expenses. That way, when you do start taking money out, your wealth keeps growing instead of shrinking. Think of it like this: don't kill the golden goose too early. 8. Let it grow big enough to produce more eggs than you'll ever need, and then enjoy the lifestyle it provides. The bottom line, reinvesting profits is how wealth builds on itself. It's how 50,000 turns into 500,000 and 500,000 into millions. It's not about making a single big score. It's about making consistent, smart choices over time. If you want to retire early, this is non-negotiable. You can't just rely on one investment and spend every penny it pays you. You've got to keep feeding the machine, reinvesting the profits, and letting compounding work its magic. Because at the end of the day, 8, passive income isn't about working less. It's about letting your money work harder than you ever could. And reinvesting profits is the strategy that takes you from comfortable to financially unstoppable. Protect and scale for long-term freedom. Building passive income isn't just about making money. It's about keeping it, protecting it, and growing it in a way that lasts for the long haul. Too many people focus only on the earning side, but wealth is fragile if it's not protected. Think of it like building a castle. You don't just put up towers. You also need strong walls, a moat, and a strategy to expand. That's what protecting and scaling your wealth is all about. Protecting what you've built. Imagine you've taken your 50 taleros and invested wisely, and now it's starting to produce a steady flow of passive income. That's fantastic. But what happens if you don't put systems in place to protect it? Taxes, inflation, lawsuits, and market downturns can eat away at your gains faster than you realize. The first layer of protection is insurance. If you own real estate, get landlord insurance. If you run a small business or own digital assets, consider liability coverage. Insurance is not exciting. It doesn't feel like it makes you money, but it's the shield that prevents one disaster from wiping out everything you've built. The second layer is legal structures. 8. Using entities like LLCs or trusts isn't just for the ultra-rich. They help separate your personal finances from your investments, so if something goes wrong, your wealth stays safer. For example, owning a rental property under an LLC can shield your personal assets if a tenant sues. And don't forget tax protection. Taxes are your single biggest lifetime expense, and they can drain away passive income if you don't plan ahead. This is why wealthy people work with accountants and tax advisors, not to cheat the system, but to use the legal benefits available to them. Things like depreciation, retirement accounts, and reinvesting profits in tax-efficient ways can save you thousands every year. Inflation and wealth erosion. Another silent killer of wealth is inflation. If you're not protecting against it, your money loses value every year. Let's say inflation is 3% and your investments are only earning 3%. That means you're not actually growing. You're standing still. The best protection is to focus on assets that grow faster than inflation. Real estate rents typically rise over time, stocks tend to outpace inflation, and businesses often scale revenues with rising costs. If you park too much money in cash, you're actually losing purchasing power. Protecting wealth means putting it in assets that not only hold their value, but grow it. Scaling your wealth once your income streams are stable and protected. The next step is to scale. Scaling means taking what already works and multiplying it. It's how you go from a few thousand a year in passive income to tens of thousands, or even enough to retire early. For example, if you own one rental property that's profitable, aim for 2, then 4, then 10. Each one adds another stream of income. If you've built an online business that earns $1,000 and a month, reinvest into marketing or hiring help so it grows to 5,000. If your dividend stocks are producing income, keep reinvesting until they generate enough to cover major expenses. Scaling isn't about reckless expansion. It's about taking proven systems and repeating them. You don't need 20 different strategies. You need 2 or 3 that you understand well and can repeat over and over. Mindset of long-term freedom. Protecting and scaling isn't just numbers, it's mindset. Many people sabotage themselves by pulling money out too early, chasing risky investments, or failing to diversify. The mindset shift is this: wealth is not about getting rich quick. It's about building a machine that lasts. Think of your 50,000 as the foundation of that machine. Protect it with systems and then scale it like a business owner. That's how you transition from relying on active work to living off passive income with confidence. Freedom doesn't come just from making money. It comes from knowing that your wealth is safe, stable, and growing no matter what happens in the economy. That's when you can relax, live life on your terms, and never worry about a paycheck again. The balance between protection and growth. Some people lean too far into protection. They never take risks, so their money barely grows. Others chase only growth, leaving their wealth vulnerable to big losses. The real sweet spot is balancing both. Protect your downside, then scale the upside. For example, you might keep 6 months of expenses in cash for emergencies while aggressively reinvesting profits from your rental property. Or you might use an LLC for protection while also leveraging your equity to buy another asset. That balance is what keeps you safe while still moving forward. The bottom line, if you want to retire early with $50,000 or any amount, you need to do more than just create passive income. 8, you need to protect it from risks, taxes, and inflation, and then scale it through smart reinvestment and duplication. Because here's the truth. Building wealth is one thing, but keeping it and growing it forever is the real game. If you protect your foundation and scale your success, you won't just build passive income, you'll build financial freedom that lasts a lifetime.